Okay, I will call the Monday, November 19th meeting of Dublin City Council to order. John, could you please lead us on the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Keenan.
Here.
Mr. Reiner.
Here.
Mr. Rosa.
Here.
Ms. Saludo.
Here.
Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Under our special presentations, we have an overview of the Northwest 33 Corridor Council of Governments. Dana.
Thank you, members of council. Good evening. It's my pleasure to introduce to you this evening Eric Phillips. Eric is the Director of Economic Development for both Union County, Marysville. He wears a few hats. He also works for the Chamber, and he's president of their Port Authority and does a lot of other things. And he's on the Council of Governments Board. We have a long, great history of working with Eric. He's a great partner and team member in the 33 Corridor. He did a fantastic job of presenting an overview of the 33 corridor and efforts during the joint chamber meeting between Dublin and Union County recently. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity for him to come to our meeting and present this, and so our residents can see it as well. So I wanted to welcome Eric and thank him for being willing to do that.
Thank you, Dan, for the introductions. Thank you, Mayor and Council members, for this opportunity. First and foremost, also thank you for your commitment to the 33 Smart Mobility Corridor and Dana's involvement, all the staff's involvement, because it really makes a difference to support this effort. It's pretty large, and keep in mind, it all started 2 years ago in 2016, and you'll see how far it's come along. So just a area map, we're all familiar with this, but this is in here for everyone else's purposes to understand. The blue area is actually the corridor map that shows you the 35-mile stretch from Dublin to East Liberty. Involves 3 counties as well, but it's a pretty important corridor, as this next map will actually show. This shows all the automotive companies along that corridor. It's actually about 70 companies, almost 70 companies that call this area home, from R&D to manufacturing. What's really remarkable about the area, 15% of the workforce in this corridor are dedicated research and development. So you don't really think of that, but there's a lot of R&D going on, which makes this corridor even more important. I always like to refer to them as bookends, TRC being one, Smart Columbus being another, but they're great bookends to have. TRC is the largest independent proving grounds for the automotive sector in the United States. All the other OEMs typically have their own training facility, but this facility actually handles 800 customers per year, ranging from the OEMs to their suppliers and many others doing research and development. This shows you the campus. This is a 7.5-mile track. Part of it, about 40% of it's in Union County. The other 60% is in Logan County to the northwest. But this provides you the main campus overview, looking at how important this track is to our future. If you look over to the ski pad to the northwest, that's another important area that's really important to our corridor and all the work we're doing. They're building a 540-acre smart center. It will be the largest smart mobility testing proving grounds in the nation once completed next year. And that's going to be another great asset. What's even more remarkable, you can do closed testing at TRC, open road testing along US 33, and then you also have what OSU Car is doing and what Smart Columbus is doing. So it creates a very unique environment when we're talking about smart mobility in the proving grounds. This is actually the campus. If you look at the impact laboratory, the green, I want to highlight, that's NHTSA's headquarters for crashing in the United States. The scary part of that whole facility, I'll tell you a story. They actually have a room about this size, and it has all those dummies in it. And they're actually $1 million dummies in there. But you touch one of them, they all clank together, and you think Chucky's going to come out from the corner. It's really scary. Don't ever turn the lights off when you're in that room. But NHTSA's crashing headquarters, and that's another asset that we have to continue to hit on, because, again, when you see a lot of the videos on TV of the crash dummies, a lot of that's actually filmed at this location. This is where we've come along. I've come a long way in the last short amount of time, and we began meeting, I think it was a reboot of our corridor meetings between Dublin, Marysville, Union County, as well as the 2 townships, Jerome and Mill Creek. We started talking about 3 main issues: economic development, infrastructure, and land use, and how we were going to partner along this corridor. It's very important for the future and how it looks, the aesthetics, as well as the growth patterns we're going to see along this corridor. We estimate about 30,000 people are going to locate in this corridor over the next 20 to 30 years. And how we grow is very important. So we started talking about those issues. But it quickly evolved into something special, and that was a fiber project. Had meetings with Dana and his staff to talk about how we were going to extend Dublin up the 33 corridor. And you ask why? We have poor connectivity along the corridor. They're not connected to ORNet, which is the Ohio network of fiber, nor is it connected to the Ohio supercomputer. And with all the R&D being done along the corridor, we felt that would be very important to our companies going forward. Soon after that, Ohio State came to us. Carla Bela, we all remember Carla, I believe. She came with this concept of improving mobility for all Ohioans. And she wanted this to be a test corridor. As you know, TRC is managed and operated by Ohio State, and then the Ohio State campus and CAR and all the work they're doing, that connectivity becomes very important from a mobility perspective. So this quickly evolved into a mobility project, smart mobility project. We then engaged ODOT. ODOT came to the table and said, hey, look, you're not going to have to pay for any money related to fiber. We'll invest in the fiber and make this happen. Originally, Marysville, Dublin, and Union County actually were going to pay for that fiber. So ODOT's been an important partner in making this happen. We created the COG, the Council of Governments. We've added our 5th member, which is actually Keith Conroy as well. And we also were awarded the grant. We all heard about the grant. It was actually October in 2016. We didn't know if we were going to get the grant. Smart Columbus was announced a couple of months earlier. We said, are they going to invest another $6 million in smart mobility when it comes to this region? And we were actually very lucky that we received that money. But we asked the question of why did we receive the funds, and it was because it was the only example of a rural to exurban to suburban to urban setting application. All the others were major metro areas. And so they were very impressed and actually excited about the opportunity to give this to a range of land uses along a corridor. In 2017, the fiber was constructed up US 33, and then also, we talked about this earlier, but the Smart Center at TRC becomes 540 acres. To put in context, that state up north, the letter we're not supposed to use this week, their M-City is 33 acres. So put that in context. So our goals, for the grant, our first goal is public safety, of course, and that's to improve congestion, safety, and access to employment. We also have a lot of goals that are related to that, and that is smart infrastructure, putting in smart infrastructure to improve the intelligence of our infrastructure as well as the vehicles in which we drive. And also data collection becomes part of that. The more data we collect, the improvement of intelligence in the vehicles in the future when we get to autonomy. And everyone gets excited about autonomy, but autonomy is way out there. We're going to see shuttles at this time, but to get to autonomy, we have to have connectivity. And that's why you hear the word CV, or the acronym CVE, which stands for Connected Vehicle Environment. That's what we're trying to create. Instilling some of Dana's words, we're creating a playground for the smart mobility sector. Very exciting stuff. The AVCV testing, we want to become the best, if not the best in the world, as well as the nation, to actually test autonomous connected vehicles along this corridor. We also want to improve connectivity. We want to commercialize the fiber and grow that fiber to assist businesses along the corridor for better connectivity. And economic development, that's where I get excited. That's my main job, that's my main hat, and that's to actually help and assist the automotive sector, to help it grow and improve, and to actually create an ecosystem that supports their growth, this disruptive technology. But also to attract new companies to locate along the corridor, and how important that is for our growth and our future as communities. This is the investment map. $93 million has been invested in this infrastructure. Honda's a $2.7 million partner in making this happen, as well as the public funds that we've set aside, and as well as over $500 million has been invested the last 3 years in the automotive sector along this corridor. And then the $125 million is actually the Honda wind tunnel that's actually under construction. It'll be the most advanced, another biggest, greatest would be the wind tunnel they're constructing at TRC. It will be the most advanced in North America once it's completed. Currently, they have to ship vehicles to Europe for that testing. So the COG structure, the Council of Governments we created, you can see with the COG members, the addition is the Marysville Union County Port Authority. The reason why that was set up is in case we had to do special financing for the fiber or other equipment. We have the COG board, of course, but we also have partners. And what's unique about this list of partners, we really don't have a formalized agreement saying this is how we're all going to work together. It's all we're there at the table because they want to make a difference. They want to make bigger and better things happen. I can't say enough about the partnership we have, what Drive Ohio has done, as well as the other partners along the way. The COG committees, we have the executive, which a lot of staff people here serve on, infrastructure, vehicle, smart network, engagement, and finance. This is actually the COG structure, or the grant implementation COG structure. After this, we implement the grant in a couple years, we'll probably have to evolve into some new structure going forward. This is the regional ecosystem that the most overused words, I think, in the English language now is ecosystem, and I'll go ahead and use it anyway. But again, the bookend with the one blue circle was TRC. To the southeast is actually the red circle, which is Smart Columbus. Then you have Connected Dublin and Connected Marysville. Some of the specifics to go with that, 35-mile stretch of mobility, or actually of smart infrastructure, 432 strands of fiber. There'll be 94 RSUs, 62 along US 33, which is important. It allows for the vehicle-to-infrastructure and the vehicle-to-vehicle communication. It will allow closed and open testing, as mentioned earlier, in all weather conditions in rural, exurban, and urban environments. I think that's one of the most important points to make of what we're doing here that makes it different and unique from the other examples around the country and actually around the world. And then also the Connected Marysville and the Connected Dublin projects. I've already mentioned the 540-acre Smart Center. And then the Smart Belt Coalition, I think, is a great opportunity. It's between Ohio, Pennsylvania, and that state up north. And it's a partnership to improve connectivity with smart infrastructure in all three states. So again, this is more specifics related to the smart intersections. There will be 147 intersections in the city of Columbus, 21 in Marysville, and over 5 in Dublin as well. There's actually going to be more intersections, and probably more like 180, 190 when we get to the numbers, and also 3,000 OBUs, or onboard units. Now, the intersections will be able to talk to cars, or the signals will be able to talk to the cars. It will give you more messaging in the vehicle. And so the onboard units are basically a DSRC, which is a dedicated short-range communication. In a sense, a simplified way, it's a Wi-Fi unit. And then on the infrastructure, you also have Wi-Fi units, so it allows vehicles to talk to the infrastructure and vehicles to talk to each other. And that connectivity all makes that happen. Today, we get a lot of warnings in our cars. You get lane avoidance if you have a new car, adaptive cruise control, crash avoidance. But that's going to quickly evolve into a lot of other messaging going forward. The Connected Dublin project really involves smart intersections at Avery Muirfield, as well as near Bridge Park, as well as a smart parking center at Bridge Park as well. Connected Marysville shows you the 27 signals that are being outfitted with DSRCs. And the goal here, and actually this project was brought to us by Honda. Honda was interested. They said, hey, look, it's great you guys are doing this corridor, but we need real-life situations in more urban settings, and we'd like to see a fully connected city to give us a better playground from a smaller standpoint, from an urban setting, or more urban setting. And so that's why we pursued the Connected Marysville project. So on October 4th, Governor Casey came out and Honda announced the world's smartest intersection in Marysville with a lot of work they put together. And I'm going to show a brief video here of the work in which was put together here, maybe. Here we go.
Honda's focus for our connected and automated technology is to provide a more enjoyable, a safer, a more efficient experience.
We have such a good working relationship with Honda, so when they approached us about this concept, we were very receptive.
And Marysville have this intersection that have all four corners with stores, with pedestrians walking up and down, and all the stores, buildings are blocking the driver's view.
Intersections are critical. These account for 20% of the fatalities that occur every year in America.
Or the cameras is using a fairly matured technology for object detection and being able to distinguish type of vehicles and type of road users in very challenging environment.
The key part of this technology is that it's able to sense things that you can't see. It's able to do things that our eyes can't do, our ears can't do, so this technology moves us beyond where any onboard sensor is today.
The vehicle is traveling towards the intersection, about to make a right turn. On the right side, a pedestrian is about to cross the street. And before the vehicle and the driver could detect the pedestrian, we issue a warning.
Pedestrian crossing. Check your surroundings.
so the driver can slow down the vehicle immediately. In this scenario, a driver is about to run a red light.
Vehicle approaching intersection.
But with this early warning, the driver is able to apply brake to avoid a disaster.
We're connected now to this multimodal ecosystem. Smart Columbus, the Smart Mobility Corridor, the Smart Intersection in Marysville. We are going to fully leverage this ecosystem to achieve our vision for a collision-free society.
That last statement really hits home when you think about what we're doing here. And you can't say enough about Honda and their impact. I know you all have 26 Japanese companies in Dublin. We have 21 in the county. We do a lot of missions over there, but the Japanese company involvement, 150 in the Columbus region, can't say enough about their commitment to our region. The other exciting thing, we're going to have drones flying around, so everyone's probably excited about that. But this is the first corridor in Ohio named for the testing of unmanned aircraft systems. I know Doug and I actually serve on a committee for that, providing use cases and guidance for the corridor and what it means to us going forward. But I think we're going to see a lot more of drones being used for a lot of different things going forward. The use cases, I think, are up to 25 or 30, ranging from ag to smart infrastructure and smart mobility testing, but more to come as we develop that plan going forward. So what applications are we going to look at for that messaging in the car? As I said earlier, we have lane avoidance or lane departure warning, we have crash avoidance, we have adaptive cruise control. In the future, we're going to have more applications or more messaging that comes to the vehicles. And it's exciting to see this, but the 8 that we're focusing on are pedestrian crosswalk warning. We saw that in the Honda video. Road weather sensor system. Today, it requires a police officer or a sheriff deputy to realize there's an icy patch on the roadway, and they place a phone call to the streets department. In the future, your car is actually going to be the collector of the information because of slippage or because of sensors that are in the tires that detect ice or snow. And that vehicle will then communicate to the DSRC, the roadside unit, which then communicates to traffic management, and then they dispatch the traffic service department to actually fix the problem or bring salt out and send the salt truck out. Curve speed warning at interchange ramps to make certain people are fully aware they have a sharp curve coming up. Reduced speed zone warning lane closure, that's related to construction. As you know, we have a lot of deaths in the construction zones, and therefore this would actually improve safety for the workers. Red light violation warning to let you know that light's turning yellow, light's turning red. You might think, well, that's kind of cool. But the other thing this technology can actually do is it can actually delay the cross traffic from the cross traffic green light, which actually could save a lot of lives because 40% of all crashes happen at intersections. If you have that one thing, it can actually improve safety so much. Ramp way warning, that's hard to say, 3 W's there. Signal phasing and timing, this is kind of cool. This is kind of the SPAT messaging, and where today we never know how long a traffic signal will last. But if you know it's 45 seconds, I think if something in your car says 45 seconds, 44 seconds, you realize how long you actually have to wait going forward. But also it improves synchronization of signals throughout your community as well. And then railroad crossing is very important. We have a lot of railroad crossings in Ohio and a lot of crashes there as well. So I guess the key facts on this slide, last year was actually 39,000. So we're almost 40,000 people dying on the highways and the streets in our country. 94% of those serious crashes are due to human error. So any way we can improve these applications is going to improve safety. So the involvement or the different eras or how we've evolved from a safety perspective related to vehicles. We made a lot of progress between 2010 and 2016. And I'm not going to read all these, but I can guess that in the next 5 years, that list is probably going to be double what we're going to do in the next 5 years when it comes to safety in vehicles. So these are key estimates that the V2V, vehicle-to-vehicle, and V2 vehicle-to-infrastructure technology could address 80% of crash scenarios in the country. V2I could actually reduce 26% of all target crashes annually. Pretty remarkable when you understand how many lives are lost each year and how we can improve safety. So where do we go from here? Right this year, construction is beginning on the loop, the redundant loop down Industrial Parkway. It's named about 5 different names along the way, but we call it Industrial Parkway. That'll provide the redundancy. The systems engineering will be completed this year. Smart Center will be completed next year. And this year we hired Michael Baker Alton Crestech to actually do the work, be our project manager, and they've done a great job so far. So in the future, hopefully we'll have the statewide data exchange completed in 19. We'll have the OBUs and DSRCs installed. And then hopefully in early 2020, we'll have a fully up and operational system that will actually be for the testing of autonomous and connected vehicles. And then the hope is that the federal government will make a requirement that all new vehicles in 2021 will actually have to have DSRC equipment. Therefore, we don't have to do the aftermarket installs of onboard units in the cars today. So a lot of great things are happening fast. I think our challenge going forward beyond this is that how do we stay ahead of this innovative, disruptive technology to be a leader, a worldwide leader in this technology going forward. That's all I have, unless you have any questions. And I must say, I thank Megan and Doug and Donna and their leadership and all the committees they serve on. We talk every day.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, you know, this has really been a great partnership with all of our partners up and down the 33 corridor. I want to recognize Eric Richter as well in the room. He was former county administrator and now at Washington Township. You might know or not know, Eric was instrumental in setting up the Council of Governments as well when we initially put that together, so I wanted to recognize that. But you know, the big lift in this is in addition to our day jobs. That's kind of how I look at this. And what I mean by that is the committees that Eric has mentioned. There are 6 working committees that support the COG. There are 6 working committees just focused on the Michael Baker execution of the grant, Crestech, the grant. And there are 10 working groups that ODOT and Drive Ohio have. Our staffs together are plugged into all of those and trying to cover down on all those different committees and working groups and so forth. I want to, from our staff, you know, Doug and Donna and Megan certainly working a lot to keep up with that. Certainly Angel on the Finance Committee, and who am I missing here? Oh, Sue, there's seriously Sue's working on the Engagement Committee. And you know, all the staff from Marysville, Union County as well. So that just needs to be acknowledged. Also, you know, for our public to be aware of too, a lot of the effort in the 33 corridor goes back many years, and I want to, you know, acknowledge Councilmember Keenan and all the years he was involved out there, as well as former Mayor and Councilmember Lecklider and now Councilmember DeRosa and Councilmember Fox are actively engaged in the corridor as well. So that's been a legacy project that we continue to work on and keep a great partnership going forward. So,
thank you. Great, thank you, Eric, for coming in.
Eric, if you could send this digitally to us, this is great information to remind ourselves of all the complicated aspects of this in the future. It's a great resource for us to keep as we share this information with all of our residents. So
absolutely,
appreciate that.
There's some bonus slides on there that I shortened out, but they talk about Drive Ohio and this smart working group that Morpsey set up too, but they'll be in the slide deck as well.
Appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Eric, for coming in. Always appreciate it. Citizen comments. We have a little sheet out there for people to sign in and come in and talk about anything they want that's not on the agenda. Nobody signed in, but does anybody want to raise their hand and they can come up here and talk about whatever they want for 5 minutes? Seeing none, we will move on. There's only one item under the consent agenda, so I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the November 5th, 2018 meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ann?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
And Mr. Keenan?
Second reading public hearing ordinances, ordinance 74-18.
Adopting the annual operating budget for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2019.
Angel?
Good evening, members of council. You received an addendum packet on Friday afternoon that had the revised 2019 operating budget that incorporated all of the items that we discussed at the Finance Committee of the Whole meeting, which was held last Wednesday. We included in that packet a memo that summarized essentially the 4 key changes that were made, and we are here to answer any questions that you have. Otherwise, we are requesting approval this evening.
Any questions from council? Kathy?
Not so much a question, but a comment when we get to that point.
Go comment away.
So first, I just wanted to thank staff, and really, I think we've probably had, I don't know how many hours of discussion and back and forth, and I think the opportunity to really be able to explore this budget at a variety of levels has been incredibly helpful. I think it's been very interesting as the community has evolved and as the city is involved, that we continue to update our policies, take it forward, and make sure as the city, I think pretty quickly here is going to reach 50,000 people that we're there on that. I guess my comment about the operating budget at some level is that has been the practice and the policy of the city for some time to really have a conservative approach to the budget, and I appreciate that. I think one of the opportunities for us as we move forward is to think about what those policies and practices might look like as it relates to conservatism around that particular budget. What I mean by that, I know it has been the practice of the city for the last several years to take a modest look at revenues, which is it's again part of the policy this year. But it has also been the practice of the city to have an expense budget that exceeds that revenue budget. And it has been then really the hard work and the reliance on how the staff spends that budget and how they manage that budget to actually keep the city under budget. And as we move forward, I think this year, I think if I'm correct, Angel, this is in 18, because of a variety of things, largely real estate acquisitions, we're actually going to have a budget for the first time where those expenses exceed the revenues in a while. Is that correct?
That's what we're projecting, yes.
Yeah. And next year, we're going to have a budget where those operating expenses, for all the reasons we know with salaries and changes in benefits, that's going to be 3 or 4% higher than where we were as an operating budget in 18. So I think when we think about what does it mean to have a conservative budget, which is an important, I think, policy of the city, what is it going to need to look like when we're in a situation where the expenses are going to continue to grow as the city continues to grow, and revenues remain at a level that are flat year over year. So I am supportive of the work. I am supportive of the policies. I know, as Vice Mayor Grooms mentioned last time, in February, we're going to be looking at a variety of these policies, the IT security policy being one, economic development policies, et cetera, so forth. And I think it will behoove us to look at what policies, not at the staff level, but at the council level, that we need to look at to make sure that we have the conservatism in the environment that where we are. So I think that is an important caveat because, again, the budget that we're about to approve has an expense budget of $2.8 million ahead of our revenue budget for the year. And I think that that's going to be an important thing in the current environment. And I think that's an important consideration for this council as we look at this particular budget, but as we look at the budget going forward. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other comments?
Greg, I'd just like to thank staff for their due diligence in putting all this together. The many past councils that have been involved, the many past finance committees, and so forth. And I, for one, am very proud of what we've done over the last 16 years I've been here. I think this most recent bond ratings that we received from Moody's, S&P, Fitch, all of which gave us the highest rating, speak very well of how we've handled it in the past and how we've handled it in the most recent past, the last 2 years, including this year going forward. There's been a lot of projects that have come forth just in the last year or two at Bridge Park that have created some anomalies. And so I'm not overly concerned about where we're at in this particular budget cycle, even though it's a little bit over. And if you read these bond rating reports, you'll see that they're not concerned about that either. But anyway, thank you, everybody, for your hard work.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Christina, go.
I also echo my gratitude to staff for being so responsive and spending a lot of time with each of us and our variety of questions and thoughts. I think that it's important to remember that a budget's not just a budget. I know I've spoken with each of you probably separately about how I feel about the budget. The budget, to me, is really the most critical policy document, strategy document, and operational document that we will pass in a single given year. I think that, we as a council, it is our job to make sure that that Dana and his staff are understanding the strategic direction that we're asking him to take the city, because the budget is really an implementation of that strategic direction. I think it's a really good idea to revisit thoughts and how we structure the budget or what the process may be. I'm very open to that. But I think that we need to make sure that we're remembering to take that broader look at exactly what a budget is for a municipality. I think that the questions that we had this year were excellent, and I really appreciated the discourse. Every question maybe brings up another question, which could bring up another question, but they all bring up answers, and staff has been very responsive. So that's been really wonderful. So it's been a very interesting budget season, and I really look forward to what we decide we are going to do from a process perspective in the coming year. So thanks to all of you as well.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah, I would echo those same things. When you look through in our packet the amount of information that is included in this budget and the underlying documents, and it is staggering, the amount of information that our staff goes through in compiling this budget. And then I would also like to compliment and thank my fellow city council members, because if you look at this, I think this is the most review that's ever been done of a budget, isn't it, Dana? I mean, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different committee meetings throughout the days. In many occasions, in the middle of the afternoon, council was coming in and reviewing, and all of those were in a public forum. So it is a really impressive document. It's very important stuff. Like Christina said, this is sort of the map that guides everything else that we do, or the policy decisions that are made in the budgeting process. So thanks to everybody for that. And unless anybody else has anything else to say, I think we're ready to vote.
I just want to say, and I agree with Mike, that the capital expenditures for this year and next year and possibly even another year were, I think, fully thought through, and because of the huge amount of change that we're bringing onto the city, aka the downtown, you might say the new Dublin over the old Dublin, the unification of Dublin with the bridge. It's a whole new Dublin, and that expense was anticipated, I think, over the years, and we could see it coming. And I appreciate, again, the staff's efforts in getting out this information, and I also appreciate your efforts and your interest in the kind of financial cash flow we're going to have. But this was something that was really brought on by major changes in our city and the capital expenditures, and it was totally anticipated. So, I agree with Mike. There's no huge fear factor. Actually, I see this as something we're going to be really proud of, and something that was done intentionally to make Dublin a special place.
Okay, with that, Ann? Jane?
Well, I want to make a couple of comments. I think it's really, once again, thank the staff. It's a lot of work, and I know that you spent a lot of time with us to understand it. I think more importantly is that citizens look to us, that we do really understand it and look at it with a fiscally conservative eye. I think now with the environment of the country, all citizens are looking to see that governments are taking all the steps necessary to make sure that transparency is there. We're constantly improving that. I know that, Dana, you mentioned the other day that we were talking about the open checkbook as a future possibility for Dublin to do that. I think our citizens love this place, and they really understand that we watch our dollars. But they're always asking to have a better understanding of how we spend it, because we are an affluent city, and we can't take advantage of that just because we are affluent. So I think making sure that we follow the steps to assure them that we're fiscally conservative, that we're always watching, that we're always constantly working to improve our efficiencies, improve our safety with our IT, to make sure that we provide all the services in the most efficient and fiscally responsible manner. I think it's a complex budget, but because of the way that we put it out there to the public, and because of the way we've studied it, I think that it helps the citizens to understand that it isn't something that we just rubber stamp every year, and that no council does that. And the questions that we ask are the ones that I think any citizens would want us to ask. And I applaud staff for answering those multiple questions we've had. And I think council has worked together really hard to make sure that we provide that to the citizens. So
If I could just do a shameless plug, we just put out a little bit on the down low our 2017 popular annual financial report. We did it a little quietly. We did a soft rollout of it electronically on the city's website, only because it was so late. This was our first year doing it. We needed to wait till our audit was complete. So it took some time to put it together. But the purpose of that document, you know, the CAFR is 260 pages of financial statements and notes and disclosures. And that is very intimidating to somebody that is not of an accounting mindset. So the purpose of this popular annual financial report, or PAFR, is to really condense it down to about 6 or 8 pages with charts and graphs and just very easy to read language in it. So I would encourage folks to look there. I would encourage council, if anybody wants to know how your tax dollars are spent, to point to that document and encourage people to go there. We'll definitely do a bigger rollout of it next year because we will make sure it's timely. But now that we've got the framework for it and the shell, it'll be much easier to execute and get that out, you know, in conjunction with our annual audit next year. But just as a point of reference for anybody that is curious.
Ann?
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes. Ordinance 75-18.
Amending various sections of Ordinance 1517.
Homer.
Good evening, members of council. Just a reminder that this ordinance is a partner ordinance to the operating budget that you just passed. As a result of the budget you just passed, there are no changes that are, you know, recommended to this ordinance as it is as it was read on November 5th. So I stand ready for your questions and recommend that we pass the ordinance as written.
Any questions from council?
I have a question, Homer. Concerning the double time eligibility of the non-permanent and temporaries on working that second day of their day off, could you fill me in on, some of our non-permanent temps work like 9 months of the year, don't they? I mean, do we have some of these employees who might be working a good portion of the year?
There's a number of them that do work, you know, a good portion of the year, yes. None of them exceed the 9 months, and we do have a limit on the number of hours that they can work. It's capped at 1,560 for the year, and a lot of that has to do with the, you know, the ACA in terms of whether or not we have to provide them benefits or not. So we do keep them constrained.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, if they're working, and Dana, you could probably answer this, if they're working if they're temporary,
yes,
and they're not permanent employees, and they're working a 40-hour work week,
yes,
and some of them would be working a 40-hour work week, so they're not eligible for double time if they work both their days off, is what you're saying?
That is correct.
Now, see, I have a problem with that. I believe that if you're working a 40-hour work week, even if you're temporary, you're still putting in double time. You're putting in the same amount of hours and times that the permanent guy is doing. So I don't know if this is a change from what we've done in the past.
It's been our past practice that we have not paid double time to non-permanent employees. And a lot of this was born out in the past out of the union contracts where they had negotiated for double time for the permanent employees that work for them. So in order to be consistent with our permanent workforce, you know, this was a provision that was added in for the permanent workforce some years ago. I'd have to go back and do some more research on that. But this was looked at very much as a added benefit for our permanent employee workforce that work year-round.
So the union non-permanent employees would get...
All 3 contracts have that worked into their...
Is time and a half and time and a half. So the first day off is time and a half, the second day off is time and a half, not double time. Is that correct?
The second day off is double time. The first regular day off. And then the contracts are each a little bit different. One of them, the USW, is worded exactly like this one. The FOP is worded more along the lines of the number of hours worked during the week, and then it's your first regular day off, providing you had worked the previous 6 days. And then if they're, I'd have to get the contract out in front of me to give you all the details, but it is worded a little bit differently. But the intent is, if they're working both their regular days off, that second regular day off, provided they'd met all the other stipulations, would be double time.
Okay, so I guess I just need clarification here. If it were a temporary, if it was non-permanent, it was just a seasonal 3 months of the year, I understand that. But if we've got some non-permanent employees who are working the majority of the year, they're just not permanent employees, and they're working side by our people that are working same number of hours, and you call them in and you're asking them to work their days off, both of their days off, they're not getting
I think that is
that
certainly
hourly
something
pay
that
the same.
Council would want to do that. It's certainly within your
Yeah.
power to make that decision. I would have to draft another separate ordinance from this one, you know, to amend
I don't know,
it.
Dana, can you give us a little, can you give me a little, my understanding is that that these are people that we have kind of all the time. They're 9 months.
No, they're 9-month employees capped, as we talked about.
All right.
And they do not get the same level of pay, if you will, that the others get. If that's a policy that council wants to talk about, we'll put that on the policy list. I think that's something you could consider. We've talked about the idea of non-permanent employees, looking at benefits packages and things like that for them as well, to some degree, and that's something that we've talked about, but we haven't acted on. But that's something that I'd like to have a conversation with council about that.
Right. It's not so much the benefit packages. I think what I'm looking at, we're going more and more towards seasonal and contractual and non-permanent. It seems as if we are tending to do that and to draw people in to want to work here. It just seems like if they're working side by side, and I'm just talking about these times when you're asking them to work both their days off. You're asking them to work a 7-day work week.
Yeah, I would not just, the first thing is, I would not say that we are going more and more towards seasonal. In fact, just 2 budget cycles ago, we converted 2 seasonals to a full-time position in maintenance that we, in our street and utility division. So there are those trade-offs. We're trying to maintain a balance with those employees. I think it's a great conversation to have. We've been focused on the opportunity to have seasonal employees to round out the amount of full-time employees and/or contractual services to round that out in order to keep the number of full-time employees at a minimum. Mm-hmm. We've done conversions of seasonal to full-time, and we kind of grow that way over time. Certainly has been the case. But again, if you want to have a conversation about other benefits to other than full-time staff, then, if you want to, I think we should circle back and have a conversation about it.
When you have replacements, though, that are needed or more full-time people, they're coming off that part-time seasonal list where you've had an opportunity to look at them, and the supervisors in the field have had the opportunity to see how they work, how they perform, and what they know about any particular job.
That's a great point. And that is our recruiting. Frankly, our recruiting pool is off of our seasonal employees, and other than full-time employees has been the recruiting base for us over the years. And we invest in them heavily with training. And, some of those seasonals leave us to go elsewhere when full-time jobs are available, and we're proud of that, actually. So we try to keep that pool robust, well-trained, and round ourselves out.
Well, I'd welcome the conversation only with some of our part-time. Does this apply to part-time employees as well? Like, for instance, if we have part-time employees, but we have an event, or we ask them over a period of 6 weeks or however many, if you ask them to work an entire 7-day work week and we have part-time employees, are they eligible for the double time or no on the second day?
Currently, they are not.
They're not, and they weren't in the past.
They're not normally full-time.
Okay.
This has been a benefit that's been for full-time permanent employees.
Only for full-time.
So when it comes to part-time employees, too, when you look at that, I would suggest you look at the how often that happens, which is probably pretty rare. I mean, when we get into maybe an Irish festival or something like that, there might be that situation, but I'd say that's probably
that's the
very
primary
rare.
place that we run into it.
We can just add that when we talk about policy at the beginning of the year, and if that's something that council wants to talk about, but thank you, Homer.
Absolutely, and I can get some more information to
That'd be great.
inform that conversation.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council? Hearing none. Ann?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Ms. Fox? Yes. Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ordinance 76-18.
Accepting the updated estimated average per acre value of land for park fees in lieu of land dedication.
Dana.
Good evening. You might recall at the last council meeting, there was a discussion on this ordinance relative to the appraisal that was conducted in support of the ordinance. Staff has determined that the appraisal was conducted in accordance with 152-086 Part C of the subdivision regulations. So therefore, we are recommending that council go ahead and pass this ordinance as is. However, I would add that we're also recommending that in light of that conversation, that we would have we would go back swiftly and take a look at that policy and those regulations and bring back a recommendation either to council as a whole or to your community development committee if you wanted to discuss that in terms of considering a modification to those regulations. There's nothing in the pipeline right now in way of projects that would really, I think, cause an issue or any loss of potential funding on this at this point. So I think we've got a little bit of time, I would say, into the first quarter of next year to get that done would be our intent. We might even get back to you as soon as February, I think, with those ideas, if not sooner.
I think that when we discussed this at the agenda meeting briefly, I think that's really important because I think we've outgrown the policy.
Yeah.
There are parts of our community where the per acre land value is exponentially higher than an appraisal for, a piece of farmland out on our western borders. So I think we need to refer this to the Community Development Committee, and I will make that motion in a minute, and try to get that addressed as quickly as we possibly can so we avoid something getting in the pipeline. So I guess that is the motion that I would make, is refer this issue to the Community Development Committee for further review of the policy associated with that code section.
I'll second.
Ann?
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
And back to the ordinance itself, I think this is something, Jen, that we need to get past now, because timing, isn't it, Dana? We need to do it every 2 years.
There is a timing issue. The regulation requires it be passed every 2 years. Unfortunately, we're up at the end of those 2 years,
So we can pass it and come back and amend the policy and amend
Correct.
this ordinance if we need to.
Do we have to pass it for 2 years? Is it because it says here for 19 and 20 under the recommendation. Can we just say for 19? But no, it has to be a 2-year policy. Okay.
The code
It says
says
every
2
years,
years.
It has
So
to be a
until
two
I guess
policy.
we could amend the code and
We
make
could
it a
change
year
it
if we wanted to
anytime,
then.
yeah.
But it has to be 2 years.
But for tonight, we got to get this in
Okay.
place. So are there any other questions from council? Ann?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
And Dana, can you please let us know when you get that information put together for the committee?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
John, that's
ASAP.
your committee, Chris
Yeah.
and Kathy.
So let us know. And
Okay, thank you. Ordinance 77-18.
Amending figure 153.061A to address street connections based on recent developments within the Bridge Street District and analysis of the district transportation plan.
Vince?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. In your packet was a memo that responded to some questions raised at the first reading of this ordinance, and if there are any further questions regarding alleys and service drives, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, we recommend continued support for this code amendment.
Any questions from council? Jane? Kathy?
No, did you make changes to this based on the conversation?
No, we did
Oh,
not.
because I didn't see any. Okay,
We
so
did
there
not.
were, can you remind me, please, forgive me, of what were some of the things you went back and looked into on this?
I think there was some confusion on the map, but especially with regard to one of the roadways. Is that accurate or not?
It was just it was just labeling exhibits, as I recall.
You're mislabeling the.
I thought there was a labeling, just to clarify the exhibit.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Is that, that's what I'm trying to remember, is that
Yeah.
all it was? Okay.
That was
think
correct,
so.
yes.
Okay. Jane, did you have something?
Yeah, I had a question. I was trying to pull it up here, but on the Streets Network map, there's,
It's your button,
yeah, on the Street Network map, we discussed about the alleys and streets not being noted, and I just wondered where we kind of went with that.
So the code references streets,
Right.
service streets and alleys. There are code provisions that speak to that. And as we noted in the memo, the design guidelines that we'll be bringing to council, we plan on going into a great deal of depth on that
Okay.
issue. from a guideline standpoint, how best to apply them, their design, functionality, those issues, so that it's a richer conversation that speaks to our policies versus reflecting them in the map, because they are so site-specific relative to a very specific development that to put them on the map would be very arbitrary and wouldn't reflect necessarily reality as a block may be created in the future. So it seemed the best response would be to go into depth in the guidelines so we have a complete direction that can be used when a development comes to the city.
I think that's a really good point. It probably does belong in the guidelines. I think that when these come before planning and zoning, and probably not so much ARB, there are probably 3 or 4 paragraphs that speak in the code about the alleys and streets, but it doesn't really give any guidelines on when to utilize those, when's the most appropriate time to utilize those, when site plans come along, and what the criteria would be to encourage those. It does speak to reducing vehicular compromise when it comes to pedestrians and alleyways and driveways and that sort of thing. But I hope in the guidelines when we look at alleys and service streets that we can find ways that we can incorporate them so that they will help with loading and service and maybe mid-block pedestrian access, maybe the way the buildings are located to kind of break up and make it seem a little bit more organic. I think the alleys and streets can do a lot more for us, the alleys and service streets, but without the guidelines, I don't think the commissions really take a look at how they can utilize them. So I would really encourage that we dive into that.
Absolutely, we will. We start looking into it.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from council? Ann?
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Bosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
And Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Ordinance 78-18.
Amending the thoroughfare plan map and the community plan to address street connections based on recent developments within the Bridge Street District and analysis of the district transportation plan.
Ditto is the last one, Vince?
Absolutely.
Any
Yes,
questions
nothing
from
to add.
council? Hearing none. Ann?
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Bosa?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vince. Ordinance 79-18. Ann?
Authorizing the city manager to execute and accept a 0.289 acre perpetual public utility and shared use path easement from the Board of Education of the Dublin School District from the property located at 4295 Bright Road for the public purpose of constructing a new cul-de-sac, constructing sanitary sewer lines and water line extensions, and a shared use path.
Megan?
Good evening, members of council. There are no changes from the first reading. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from council? Hearing none. Ann?
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Bosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Ordinance 80-18.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a settlement agreement to acquire 0.1270 acre fee simple right-of-way, 0.9139 acre fee simple right-of-way, 0.6520 acre permanent utility easement, and a 0.0953 acre temporary construction easement from Kevin G. Bennington, Mark A. Bryant, Larry D. Clark, and Mark A. Palmer, successor co-trustees of the Duroc Trust, located at the southeast corner of State Route 161 and Causeway Road, a 0.0299 acre temporary construction easement from the same property owner, located in Plain City Road, and a 0.0232 acre temporary construction easement from the same property owner, located at 7520 Plain City Road for the public purpose of constructing roadway improvements.
Paul, let's see if you can do as well as Megan just did, Paul.
Actually, my comments are the same as hers, so I'll be glad to answer any
Does
questions.
council have any questions?
Staff recommends approval.
Any questions from council? Hearing none. Ann?
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Mr. Bosa?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Excellent job, Paul.
You're welcome.
I make a motion to waive council rules of order to address ordinances numbers 81-18 through 85-18 together. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ann?
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Bosa?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ann, could you please read the
8118
property owner?
is the Edwards Avery Road LLC at 5300 Avery Road. 8218 is Edmund Allen Donna Crone at 5508 Kara Court. 8318 is Larry S. Kincaid, located at 5509 Kara Court. 8418 is Matthew B. Brown at 6228 Rings Road. And 8518 is J. Larry Fleck.
Anything, Paul?
Members of council, I apologize for repeating myself, but I'll repeat myself in basically the same report as previously, with the exception of, I think the question did come up about these acquisitions, how many more we have to go. We do have 21 parcels resolved and 24 parcels yet to go for a total of 55. So we will be before you next year with many more, including the next council meeting. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Staff recommends adoption.
Thanks, Paul. Any questions from council? Ann?
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Ordinance 86-18, Ann?
Authorizing the city manager to execute a real estate purchase agreement and the necessary conveyance documentation to acquire a 4.215 acre, more or less fee simple interest from Thomas Family LP.
Dana?
Thank you. No change to this ordinance, although at the last meeting, there was a question about the exact northern boundary of the property relative to the center line of the ditch. Nick has a graphic to put up for you that shows it. I think we answered it last time. I just want to make sure y'all saw this. Staff still recommends, in consideration of all the previous conversation about this property, that council would go ahead and pass this ordinance tonight.
Thanks, Dana. Any questions from council?
Yeah, Dana, again, back to, I suppose the blue line represents the creek bed, right?
It does, yes.
And so in this procurement, we're not going to be able to take in maybe the most interesting part of this particular parcel, which is, and is there any way we can expand it, pick up that extra?
I would.
That's the passageway, I take it. You know, if you were ever going to walk from the one side underneath Route 33 and get to this parcel, you'd actually want to own that.
The initial conversation about this property was and continued to be about the potential commercial development on this property, in that it lies adjacent to the other property to the east that the city of Dublin owns. That was the primary conversation to begin with. Now, we've always had an interest in that other area along the creek or drainage ditch there, and there are unique features through there. That property belongs to the north, obviously belongs to another landowner, Mr. McDowell. We could certainly approach him about that conversation, but as we have shared in the past, should that property ever develop, I would think the city, through its green space ordinance, would probably get control of that over time, as well as the Indian mounds and those remains that are on that McDowell property as well. But, you know, we can certainly see if he'll entertain such a conversation about that.
Yeah, that riparian corridor is probably the most interesting aspect of it. I get the idea of us securing this for commercial reasons, but I'd be very interested in seeing if we could get Mr. McDowell to possibly sell us that section.
Well, you probably know as well as anybody, Mr. McDowell is not a seller.
Yeah, I know.
We've had the property that's been adjacent or catty corner from Field of Corn that's been sitting there for many, many years, and many people. In fact, we tried to broker a deal with the schools for that site, as you'll recall.
But you know, Mike, that really contains probably the most interesting. It's got the caves, the holes.
Well, I've been there. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's got the whole. You can sense that. Hey, the Indians actually utilize this site for a whole bunch of purposes, and it'd be a neat addition. And also would allow, maybe in the future, and I don't know if it's possible, a passageway for pedestrians underneath the road to connect up to the other part of it.
I do want to add, too, though, so it's not my words aren't mistaken, there are areas in this acreage as well that we're recommending that you purchase that would be preserved. There's significant tree stand. There is part of that riparian corridor, and I don't want that to be misconstrued that we would develop all of that. There's only a couple developable acres out of this 4 acres, but it's a pretty critical location relative to the land that the city already owns, Emerald Parkway and the view shed from I-270. So anyway.
So you'll keep your eye on the rest of that stuff for us. All right.
Okay.
I noticed in the contract that the intended use was commercial or parkland.
It would wind up being a combination of the two.
Right. And so I just point out to council, as we talked about fee in lieu of, that this is $150,000 an acre.
It's kind of ironic on this.
Be a good comparable for us to look at, no doubt.
Yes, I mean,
You
there you
compare
are.
those two numbers.
So that's twice as much as what we're charging.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments from council? Ann?
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Ms. Fox? Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Introduction, first reading ordinances, ordinance 87-18.
Amending the annual appropriations for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2018.
I'll introduce it. Matthew.
Good evening, Council. Tonight I'm presenting Ordinance 87-18, which amends appropriations for fiscal year 2018. A memo providing details on the recommended amendments was included with this ordinance. Staff recommends approval at the next hearing on December 3rd, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions or comments from council at this point? Kathy?
Yes, thank you. So of the total amount requested, what is the breakdown between that that's needed for the operating expenses and that's needed for capital? I couldn't easily do that math on there. And we can bring that back next time or whatever. We don't have to try to do the math now, but I would like to understand that if we could,
Okay,
please.
I'll bring
That'd
that
be great.
figure back.
Thank you.
Is that okay if he brings it back?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's right. Yeah, you doing the math now is, yeah, we don't need
On
that.
the
Thank
fly.
you.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Thanks, Matt. We'll see you back on December the 3rd on that. Ordinance 88-18.
Establishing appropriations based on the 2019 operating budget of the City of Dublin.
I'll introduce it. Angel?
Thank you, members of council. I'm not sure if you had at your desk this evening.
We
You
do.
did.
They do.
The
A
updated
revised
thing.
appropriation
Yeah.
ordinance based on the revised 2019 operating budget that you just approved. This was different than the one that was electronically distributed in your packet just because of the timing of the Finance Committee meeting last week. So this matches the budget that you adopted a few moments ago, and we are requesting approval at the second reading on December 3rd.
Any questions from council at this point? Hearing none. Thank you, Angel. We'll see you back on that on December the 3rd. Introduction, public hearing on resolution 67-18.
Requesting the Delaware, Franklin, and Union County auditors to draw money that may be in the county treasuries and to issue a draft to the Director of Finance of the City of Dublin for any money that may be in the accounts for the City of Dublin.
I'll introduce it. Angel.
Thank you. This is simply a routine piece of housekeeping that we bring forward each year at this time of year so that we can get an advance on the property tax dollars that the county auditors distribute to us. Certainly to the extent that we can get our dollars sooner, we can put those to use and invest them and earn the interest on it.
Any questions from council? Hearing none. Ann?
Ms. Fox? Yes. Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Resolution 68-18.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for public health services for 2019 with the Board of Health of the Franklin County General Health District.
I'll introduce it. Dana?
As stated in the title, this is for public health services for 2019. This does not include mosquito control and management services. City's cost for 2019 contract is $417,585, and this amount has been budgeted as part of the proposed, now adopted 2019 operating budget. Staff recommends council approve Resolution 68-18.
Any questions from council?
I'd just offer, I think we would have the ability, if we wanted to form our own health department. We've looked at that in years past, but it's very, very expensive.
You saw how big my eyes got.
I just wanted to pass that along to everybody that has been looked at years ago, and it was exorbitant, yeah.
Well, I'm actually impressed with this amount of services that you do get for the dollar, because it's quite a bit. I just went to look to take, and if you itemize each one of those, it's amazingly amount, and they probably do a much more efficient job because they do it everywhere. So,
Any other questions? Ann?
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Resolution 69-18.
Accepting the lowest and best bid for the Dublin Arts Council Entry Plaza improvements.
I'll introduce it. Matthew.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Before you tonight for Resolution 6818 is the bid acceptance for the Dublin Arts Council Entry Plaza improvements. In your packet, there were some drawings that were provided for you, and unfortunately, some of the hard copies in council planning were late, so sorry about that, Councilmember Fox. The consultant's estimate for this project was $200,000. The bid amount came in at $166,513. Staff is requesting a contingency addition to that for materials testing, site testing, et cetera, that we anticipate there might be a few issues with some of the bedrock, et cetera, but, so we want to put in a contingency dollar amount to support that. Staff has worked very hard to work with the Dublin Arts Council staff to involve them with this project. They will be using this plaza for some small event areas and galleries and things out front of the Dublin Arts Council itself. The bid acceptance would be awarded to Builderscape, who has done a variety of projects for us in the past to our satisfaction. One important note is that this contract won't be awarded until we actually get approval from ARB. ARB was supposed to hear this project in October. However, they had to cancel their meeting due to a lack of a quorum, so that has been put on hold. So that is one of the contingencies with this bid acceptance and contract. So with that, staff recommends approval. I have a couple slides here if you'd like to see them. Otherwise, I'll take any questions.
You guys want to see the slides? Anybody want to see the slides? Let's see the slide.
There's only 3 of them, so it'll be very quick.
All 3.
Just a quick locator for those who aren't familiar with the Dublin Arts Council along Riverside Drive. It's very evident by this map on the yellow area as depicted. The site project area is just out front of the facility itself. You can see they're highlighted in yellow. And then the plan itself will be a fairly elaborate planting plan along with pavers to support the plaza area. There will be 4 stone pillars on each of the corners of the boxed-in area where the vegetation is going. You'll also notice the shaded area to the top of the page there looks somewhat as a roadway. That will actually be a grass-supported pavement structure that we will actually grow turf on to be used as a auxiliary entryway and exit spot. So with that, that's all I have.
The contingencies you're asking you're talking about, is that because the contract doesn't list the fact that there's underground possible contingencies, i.e. blasting our way through a bunch of rock to put the pavers down? Is that why you're asking for that money?
Correct.
Okay.
Matt, I wanted to ask you, it's a historical structure, so you really think you're going to have to blast around a historical structure?
If we run into an issue, we will likely not use blasting as the response.
So my other question is this. You said it goes before the ARB, which was one of the things I was going to bring up. It's not on Appendix G. So I'm curious. I'm pleased. I was going to request that we put it on the ARB's purview, but it's not on Appendix G. So
Like a drive-under thing.
I checked it today. So I'm curious as to, I'm happy that it's going before ARB. And what I was going to request of the city and council to consider is that the city owns quite a few of the historic buildings and barns and stone walls within the city. And I believe that if we require our residents who are in the historic districts and our commercial properties in the historic district and our Appendix G property owners in the historic district to abide by ARB review, that I feel that the city who owns historic properties should also abide by ARB review, because what it does is it guarantees that our historic assets are reviewed and looked at by our commissions, because that's the standard we set, and that's the standard I believe that the city should also live by. So I'm pleased as punch that we have this going before the ARB, and I would say that when we talk about policy at the first of the year, that we add that to our list, that our historic assets should also be reviewed by our commissions.
I would just say that we have had a long history of doing that, as well as all of our parks projects go before Planning and Zoning Commission. There are some cities who exempt themselves from those processes. We've always subjected ourselves to all those reviews by the appropriate board commissions and committees through any development process that we do, including our own city facilities as well.
Right. Well, I think of the stone walls, for instance. Those, when they came down or they were moved, they didn't come before ARB. When new planters or anything's put in the historic district, a permanent structure, they don't come before the ARB. What I'm really looking for is, we have done some wonderful things, and I'm not saying any of it is wrong. What I'm saying is that our commission is there to be sure that everything is complementary, that one department isn't putting in something and another department doesn't know what they're doing, that it comes before and it's looked at with a standard that has some guidelines and an eye of aesthetics that only the ARB can offer in historic properties. The other thing that happens is we also look for neglect, or not that we neglect anything, but if we have a concern that we have a historic asset that maybe that's being utilized by another entity, the city's not watching it, ARB has the ability to bring that to the attention of the city and say, maybe this needs a little bit more look at, because we don't want to lose that historic asset. So I just would like to see us put all of our historic assets in inventory so that ARB gets an opportunity to review them when they come up for change.
Any other comments?
Question on the white areas, and we've got this one site plan, but doesn't show us the rest of it. It says pavers. Are we to construe that the entire parking area is going to be pavers, or just sort of the landing area in front of the main door in that design?
The way I understand it, it is going to be two different styles of pavers that will more or less highlight where the drive is versus where the two plazas on the top and the bottom towards the doorway are.
So the pavers are starting at the entry gates, more or less?
No.
No, that's going to be hard surface like asphalt?
It is asphalt. It'll remain asphalt as it is now.
Okay, and then what's going to happen is, what we're really looking at is that the entry going into the building is going to be the pavers?
Correct.
Okay. Another nice aspect about this, because there seems to be sometimes not enough parking in that facility, is the insertion of the concrete and grass tracks. So I'm sure that in the future is going to be sort of on-lawn parking, but it's going to be fairly secure for rainy days and rainy nights, because there is a shortage of paving.
Yeah, the track that's proposed here in this design is basically to divert traffic around the plaza area when it's in use.
Yeah.
To get access to that lower level parking.
That's going to be a good thing, though, because we're going to, some nights it's so rainy and muddy out there on these openings, and we just don't have the parking, and I'm sure that they'll start utilizing that.
Agree.
Yeah, thank you.
I was just wondering real quick, Matt, when you went through the bid process, there's only two, and one of them was almost double the other bid. Were there ever questions?
Yeah, they were a paving company, and typically when you don't have someone who specializes in this kind of landscape detail, you'll get that, because they'll end up either just throwing a number out to see if they can get a bite on something, or they'll line up their own subcontractors, and then you've got all this other
layer upon layer.
Layer upon layer stuff. Okay.
What happened here is somebody hired one of these paving companies. That's what all they do, and I can name the name of the company, and they're probably around 50% to 70% less than a landscape contractor doing it. So I'm sure he's either going to sub it back out to him or include him in your project.
Right.
Okay. Ann?
Mr. Rosso?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Staff comments, Dan?
I'm going to use formally yielded time to cover 8 items with you tonight, but I'll try to make them quick. First item, and these really are almost all coming out of your informational packet. There was a memo in your packet about the Bridge Street Code Amendment Phase 1. Staff's preparing an ordinance to amend several sections of the zoning code as part of the proposed amendment to the Bridge Street District review and approval process. That proposed amendment is a result of a project that was initiated in 2016, and it has continued since then and involved multiple work sessions with City Council, Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Architectural Review Board. The proposed amendment seeks to streamline the development review and approval process and promoting consistency among application fees. There's a summary of some of those changes in that memo I won't go over, and staff requests City Council refer this matter to the Community Development Committee for review and recommendation prior to actually introducing the ordinance. We'd like to have that conversation beforehand.
Then I will make such a motion that we refer the Bridge Street Review Plan to the Community Development Committee. Is there a second?
A second.
Ann?
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Ms. Fox? Yes. Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
This one does not require action, but there was a memo in your packet about the Dublin Corporation Corporate Area Plan update and the process involved. There's a step missing that was my oversight. It talks about neighborhood engagement, which occurred with neighborhood leadership engagement, which was on October 29th. Then there is a series of engagements with commercial property owners. Some of those are individual engagements. And then it mentions a council workshop. And really what I'm going to do is have a greater public input session prior to coming to council workshop. So I just wanted to put that on your radar screen and make sure you're aware that there was going to be one more step involved in that. There is another memo in your packet regarding the October 15th joint work session. It's a follow-up memo to that. And you might recall you had a joint session with your Planning and Zoning Commission on that date. Staff provided a memo in this packet that summarizes the direction that we thought we were given at that meeting. So I just wanted to raise that to your attention. And if I wouldn't expect you to necessarily answer that tonight, but wanted to make sure we captured that appropriately. If we did not, let us know, or if you know that offhand now, let us know. But we intend to go ahead and progress in accordance with this memo and the action items here. And if there are any issues, let us know and we'll adjust. But we'll also keep you advised as regarding the progress of this process as we go along. Next was a memo in your packet about the Emerald Club changes at the Dublin Irish Festival. That is simply as it relates to having that club function similar to the other VIP clubs. You might recall these clubs are really there to help raise funding and so forth. If you have any concerns or issues with that, please let me know right away because we're going to be advertising that as soon as December the 1st. Just want to say thank you to Lieutenant Colonel retired and Commander of the VFW, Jeff Noble, for the great Veterans Day event. I personally couldn't be there, but got to watch the video and I thought it was pretty incredible. My old boss, Major General retired Greg Waite, was the presenter, and as always, he does a great job. I love the way he engaged the kids there. Anyway, I just wanted to thank Jeff and General Waite for their involvement there. And Jeff Noble, his commitment on doing this stuff is incredible, and the staff really enjoys working with him and doing that. The next item, Christmas tree lighting, just a reminder, November 29th, Kaufman Park. 5 p.m. is when it all starts, but the actual Christmas tree lighting is at 6:30. I also wanted to let you know that I went to Detroit a couple weeks ago and bid farewell to Consul General and Mrs. Wada. And carried a key to the city on behalf of you all and the mayor, and got to bid him farewell and thank them so much for their partnership and engagement here with us. And we will welcome the new Consul General Nakagawa, who is inbound as the new Consul General of Japan. And he actually will be in town in a couple weeks at an event. We'll make sure that's on your calendar in case you can swing by and say hello to him. And the last item I wanted to lift up was the bond ratings that came out. I know Council Member Keenan mentioned that earlier. Really what I want to say about that, you'll know what that's about. I mean, to achieve a AAA bond rating from all three rating agencies is significant. It's a great validation of our fiscal health. Primarily, though, I want to thank Angel for all the effort that she put into that, as well as our advisory team. I think she's kind of crazy because I mean that in a complimentary way, that she scheduled this right in the midst of all the budget preparations and everything that was going on. And if you've been involved with any of these, they're very intense. It's a big effort to prepare. It's a big effort to present. And I don't know how she found the energy to pull that together and get that done. But I'm just really proud of her and the entire team. And I am very proud of Council for your fiscal leadership and the fact that we can pull off three, again, AAA rated agencies, AAA ratings from all three agencies. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Dana. Committee reports, P&Z. Jane? Admin Chris is not here. She didn't report anything. We are doing dates in December for the interviews of ARB and P&Z candidates. Community Development, John? Nothing. Finance, Mike?
Just like to thank everybody for the process for the budget. Our committee, Finance Committee, and staff, and everybody on council. It was a very long and extensive review, as was the capital improvements budget, and I think it was good. Went through a lot of things. I don't know if I'd want to do that every year, but hopefully we'll have a lot more insights as this council reviews that next year. We have the hotel motel tax policy discussion on Monday the 26th. I am out for Thanksgiving, and Christina will be chairing that committee, and I'd invite the rest of council. It's a fun thing. Really get to see a lot of the people putting their hearts out in terms of their requests and for the good of the community. So if you got a chance to come, whether you're on the committee or not, I'd highly recommend it.
Thanks,
That's
Mike.
all.
Public Services, Christina?
Nothing. You guys saw my report when we reviewed the budget.
CODA, Kathy?
Yes, thank you. I had the opportunity last Friday night to join CODA's Community Innovation Workshop that they're doing or they did actually last weekend in collaboration with Columbus City Council. Thrive Columbus Transportation Innovation Weekend was the title of it. This is where I think a little over 100 community volunteers get together, literally spend an entire weekend and look at what innovations in mobility. Our own J.M. Rayburn was a mentor there to help, so a big nod to him. I saw him on Friday night, headed in for a long weekend. But this is really a really fun example of how community collaboration really changes direction and activities for the organization. I had mentioned the CPAS, I think, project a few times, where organizations are paying for rides on behalf of their employees to improve mobility. That came out of a similar session in the past. So I look forward to seeing what will come from that. But I think it's just a great example of how community collaboration and engagement, and it was a lot of fun and a lot of energy just in the kickoff. So that was great.
Thanks, Kathy. Dublin Friendship Association, Christina?
We meet tomorrow.
Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, Chris is not here. Logan Union Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, Kathy, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to thank the folks at Jerome Township for hosting the session where the members of the Route 33 Smart Corridor got together again and presented the joint overlay. As Eric Phillips explained tonight, that long corridor, the goal of that overlay is to really make sure we get some consistencies, if we can, in shared zoning from an overlay perspective up and down that corridor. There was a lot of folks there, very positive feedback. Again, a wonderful example of how the communities are coming together to think about this. So another important step. Thank you for that. And then last Thursday evening, on a very fun snowy night, went to their annual dinner in East Liberty, really to cap off their year. There's been a lot of activity and a lot of zoning activity and development activity, as you would expect. So that was nice. And again, Mr. Phillips, who presented tonight, did the same review and overview. And really, it was very heartwarming, I think, to everybody and every one of the partners, because including Dublin, many of the partners who have been on this corridor got to see it, and it was fun to be there. So I appreciated that opportunity. This really is, a lot of the Smart Corridor stuff is really a really fun example of, I think the future. I get a smile. I grew up on Route 66, and this is Route 33, and a little place. And I think about really how 66 really connected the whole country, if you will. And the 33 corridor has some real interesting opportunities, and real fortunate to be part of that. So it was fun tonight, and thank you, Dana, for having Eric come give a presentation, because it's really starting to happen. And it's really fun to see. So there was a lot going on there. So thanks.
It's a long way out to East Liberty, isn't it? Last
on
time,
a snowy, cold night, it was a drive.
They took me out there many years ago, and I thought I was being hijacked.
Yeah.
Does that also cover US 30? I'm assuming that you covered
I
30
did.
corridor.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Dublin Arts Council, John?
Tomorrow's the opening of another exhibit, so you're all welcome. It's called the Art Quilt Alliance, and these quilts are so well executed, they appear to be paintings. This is not your mother's quilt. These are really beautiful, graphic, well-done pieces of art. So if you get a chance, stop in. Tomorrow night's the opening.
Thanks, John. Dublin Board of Education, Christina?
Nothing this time.
And Washington Township, Mr. Richter. Chief, come on up. You know, while he's making his way up here, I want to thank Chief O'Connell. I had a young man that had approached me that was interested in a career. He's working on his master's degree, and he was interested in a career in firefighting. And I asked the chief to meet with us for a little while. He spent almost 2 hours with this kid. Was so welcoming, so professional. We are so lucky to have him out representing our community. So I don't know what brought you to the podium, Chief, but
I appreciate that.
I've spoken my piece. Thank you for what you did.
Thank you for the opportunity. Mayor, members of council, I wanted to touch base with you this evening. We've had 3 significant incidents, as most of you know about, this month. And anytime we have these type of incidents, I want to make sure I get in front of council so you can hear from us what we've done and what we've tried to do to take care of the issue. We've had 3 significant fires. Our first fire was on November 5th. That was on Dunaker Park. That turned out to be a basement fire on a rather large structure. We've done some research and some investigation, and we're waiting on a report back from the electrical engineer, but it appears that that fire started in some Cat 5 wiring in the basement above a can light. So everybody was out, everybody was safe in that fire. We got the fire extinguished pretty quick, but just want to give you an update on that. It was a significant loss, though, in some of the construction that's being done on that. So it's going to set them back a little bit. Our second fire, unfortunately, was the next day on November 6th. That was on Lockmore Court, and a lot of you have heard a little bit about that. I will tell you that was a difficult fire for us. I'll give you a little bit of the history behind that. And I will say, as a little caveat to that, is this is still under investigation, and we're trying to release information as we get it in, but we're still, out of respect to the family, we don't want to release something that we don't have all the information yet. So we are holding it back. I've had a lot of people in the community reach out to me to ask for additional information. I feel bad because this community is so connected, but I just can't give the information out until we have the right information. But when we received the call at roughly 11 o'clock that night, we got a report of a working fire. And when our crews got there, when they got on the scene, they were met by a neighbor who said that they believed that there was a victim in the house. As our crews made entry, they were radioed in that they thought there was a victim, that we were told there was a victim in the house. So the first crew that went in the front door had heavy fire on the first floor with high heat conditions. When they got word that there was a victim in the house, they divided the crew. The crew went up to the second floor, made a search of the second floor, and found the victim real quick. So we were happy with the level that they put in, the expertise that was able to find the patient quick. They extricated the patient immediately and put the patient right into the medic. So we felt that what we did, we couldn't have done anything quicker than we did. They rescued the victim quickly. Unfortunately, as you know, they did not survive the incident. So we are critiquing that fire to make sure we've done everything correct. As I said, the one thing that bothers us and one of the things that we're going to focus on, at this point, our prevention bureau did not find any working smoke detectors in the house at this point. So obviously that's a difficult thing where we feel like that we have to go back and educate the public a little more. And again, the city, as usual, has been great with helping us do that. So we're going to continue to build on that also.
Chief, aren't those hardwired by code?
Yeah, some of them are. It depends if they took them down. I'm not sure at this point as our prevention has done the investigation. They've either been taken out or they can't find them. There were heavy heat conditions on the second floor too, but they haven't found any trace at this point. Like I said, we're still waiting for some other agencies to come back with some reports, and as those come back, we'll fill you in with more detail. But we just want to make sure we have all the information correct before we share anything on that. We did work with the PD, and again, they were professional in helping us, and it's amazing how we work hand in hand, and I appreciate all they've done for us. The last fire we had was again on November 10th. That was on Berkshire Court. That appeared to start in the garage, but when the house started on fire, when they noticed it, they left the garage or the door open into the house, and it spread into the first floor of the house also. But crews were able to contain that fire pretty quick. So with that being said, those are the incidents we had, and I want to make sure we have any significant incidents. We make sure in front of the council to share that with you. And again, I can't tell you the support we get from the city, how much we appreciate Dana and all the staff, how much they reach out to us for help and offer the resources of the city. And I know that we cannot be successful without your support and the citizens' support. So I just want to make sure I made that clear. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Really appreciate you coming in. Jane?
Chief, I wanted to ask you a question about, just for a kind of a public information, the flexible gas lines. Should people be concerned about removing those from their house? Because I've heard with electrical incidents or when there's bad storms, sometimes these things create real problems. Can you give us a little insight on that?
That's true. They have been linked to with lightning strikes if the gas lines are across a vent and they could arc and catch fire. We have seen that. We have seen that here in Dublin. We suggest that you do have somebody come in and take a look at it, and just to have a plumber come in and look at that, make sure it's not across the vent work stuff. So yeah, we have seen that across the country. We've seen it in Dublin. So yeah, I would definitely recommend the fire department could look at it, but we're just going to tell you to have a plumber if you have to adjust any of your gas lines or anything like that. But yeah, there's definitely enough interest there to have your house checked. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fantastic, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody better in the business than you guys. Council Roundtable. Jane?
Yes, I went to I want to congratulate Michelle and the ICF Institute workshop and Christina Ludo and Outreach did. They brought Peter Kageyama, is that right? Yes. He's the gentleman wrote For the Love of Cities, a love affair between people and their cities. And he did comment on how he believes that Dublin does have a love affair with its city. One of the things that he does is he brings citizens and municipal folks together to create emotionally engaging and, as he said, fun cities. He built a pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid was the word fun. And we can do a lot of things, safety and services and all that, but at the very top, we should do fun. So I know that you illustrated to him the Dublin Irish Festival. He couldn't get over the field of corn. There's all kinds of fun things happening. But one of the things I wanted to tell you about is that there were quite a few people at the workshop, a lot of residents. You sat down at the table and you had 15 minutes to brainstorm a fun idea, and if your idea was voted the best, you won $500 to implement it. So the winning idea was from a group at the table to have tree swings. Just walk through the park, and all of a sudden, there is a tree swing to swing on. So I don't know where that's going, but I think there was a tie, actually, and Michelle, you'd have to tell me who the gentleman was who came up with the additional $500 to fund a historical walk-run relay. Anthony Anthony Trippy. So that was great.
It'll probably be going to Ron Whittington for review for risk management, number one. Number two, we have a lot of standards with playground equipment that we have to adhere to.
I know. You're trying to take the fun out of this.
Jane, that's in the city manager handbook, remember? Know first, and then
fun. There you go. But so that was just a wonderful event. Thank you for putting that on. Second, quickly, is I attended the Dublin Historic Society meeting the other night. I'm encouraging them to ask for grants. They could really use a little bit more help with their funding. December 2nd and 9th from 2 to 5 is the Kaufman Christmas Open House, which is a great event, and people should know about that. They've updated their website. You can go to their GPS now and find a historical asset or a historical structure and learn all about it. And then the last thing I want to mention is I went to, last Thursday night, I want to thank Molly Steiner for the Blue Zone event, which is, the Blue Zone are regions of the world where people live longer than the average human does. And so they want to bring that here to Dublin, so we'll all be aging gracefully into our hundreds. It was fascinating to learn the 9 characteristics that are common among those people who live in these areas. And their idea is to bring that to Dublin and to help all of us learn how to live by these characteristics and help our businesses, our government, our citizens understand that these characteristics will help them live longer. So it was a really great evening, and Molly did a great job.
You know, that's the, we have brought that up in previous years, the Blue Zone. and that is the greatest gift we can give our citizenry, is a long and healthy life. I'm sorry I was out of the country and missed that. Yeah.
Is that it, Jane? Kathy?
Thanks. Yeah, I was at the fun event with Jane too, so it was really engaging. And I think one of the things that was particularly interesting about that group is just how much they embraced every aspect of the city. It was what people treasured about the city. That was the really first exercise, is go up and just say what you treasure. And the next person would come up and say, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's it too. Yeah, that's it too. It was quite an engaging night. And I think this is an example, and the CODA group is an example of how powerful it is with what can happen through community engagement. So that was great fun too. Just I guess one other thing, I had the opportunity to attend the hard hat tour of the new library last week as well, and get an early look at it. It's very, very interesting. If the vista, I guess I will use that word, from the second floor of the library, you can see from almost one spot the historic district, what we're calling the transition district, and the bridge park and the bridge within, I don't know, 50 feet of each other. They have done quite a nice job to make sure that the library does connect those pieces. You really can't see it from the outside, but if you haven't scheduled one, I know they're scheduling them pretty regularly, do put that on your dance card, because it's really interesting, and it is enclosed. It's not warm, but it's not cold. It's enclosed.
I think there's one tomorrow night at 5.
They're doing them, pretty regularly now. So to take the time to see that, because I think that really was the desire to do that connectivity, and you really can see that happen in the library. So enjoy that, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. John?
Hey, Jane, back to you on the Kaufman House Historical Evening, which I went to before and is really nice. Is that going to be the same night as the Christmas tree lighting? Are they going to?
I don't know. It's the 2nd and the 9th. 2nd and the 9th, right? No, I guess.
And the 9th. It's
and the 9th.
There's
two
2
nights.
nights.
And they're looking for volunteers too to help out with that.
Okay, and our possible new symbol for our city, the flag, we are still in the process of incorporating all 28 designs and then recommended revisions into one comprehensive whole that everybody can sort of see their work in this particular piece of art. But sometimes, and I got to thank my colleague Kathy for this. Sometimes we're thinking ahead, and what is apparent to us will become apparent to others in time. So we're probably going to put this off. The designs are getting better and better as they're watching the city change, and they're incorporating some of the things we're really doing. So I think in the end, we're going to have a very bold and cool-looking flag. But I think we want to put this off until I think the rest of the community catches up to what we're really doing here. So that's the latest on that project, the never-ending project.
All right. Well, thank you, John. Mike?
I'm good.
Christina?
I'm good.
And I will wish everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving, and we are adjourned.